cool with it.
Oh. All right. All right. Good evening. I'd like to welcome you to the St. Helena Planning Commission for March 15th, 2016. And I would like to ask Commissioner Kistner to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
There's a back. All right. If we could have roll call.
Chairperson Parker,
Present.
Vice Chair Kistner,
Present.
Commissioners Monette,
Here.
Sweeney,
Here.
Koberstein.
Here.
Moving on to public forum, this is an opportunity for the public to address the Commission on items of interest to the public that are not listed on tonight's agenda. Because of restrictions imposed by the Brown Act, the Commission may not engage in discussion nor take action on items not described on the agenda. Would anyone like to speak at public forum? Seeing none, I'm going to move on to our consent items. There are two this evening. One is the approval of the minutes, which says none. Or are they not ready?
So we had an absence from staff member Kerrigan, so the minutes were not prepared in time for this meeting. They'll be brought back to the next meeting in addition to the minutes from this one.
I stand corrected. So we only have one item on the consent item. It's the design review exemption for 613 Harvest Lane. Would anyone from either the commission or the public like to pull this item? Seeing none, if we could have a motion for the consent
I
item.
move that we approve the consent calendar items.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Sorry, may I ask who's second?
Commissioner Monette.
Commissioner Kistner,
Yes.
Commissioner Monette,
Yes.
Commissioner Koberstein,
Yes.
Commissioner Sweeney,
Yes.
Chairperson Parker.
Yes. Moving on to our public hearings, we have two this evening. Our first is a formal action to adopt a resolution of our denial of 1508 Spring Street. May we have a staff report, please?
Thank you, Chair Parker. At the March 1st meeting of the Planning Commission voted to deny a covered parking variance and design review for a remodel in addition to 1508 Spring Street. Resolution of denial wasn't available for the Planning Commission to vote on, so staff prepared a resolution of denial for the Commission to vote on this evening. A couple commissioners expressed the desire for additional details within the resolution, and Commissioner Koberstein was kind enough to prepare an amended resolution of denial for consideration. Copies of the amended resolution have been provided to the Commission and are available on the table near the back door. Staff recommends that the Commission vote on the resolution of denial before you this evening.
All right, perfect. Are there any questions of staff? Seeing none, I'm going to open up the public hearing because this is a formal adoption. Would anyone like to speak at public hearing? Seeing none, I'm going to close the public hearing and invite commissioner discussion.
I wanted to get some more clarification from Commissioner Koberstein about what motivated and Commissioner Kistner about what motivated you to make the changes you made, and and I think they're wonderful. Thank you very much for writing that up. But I'd like to understand a little bit more as to why the other one wasn't adequate. In your mind.
Well, I thought that we had a very passionate, intelligent discussion, and I just didn't think it was complete enough. There were a whole bunch of things that we talked about and that weren't included in that resolution, and I think you were one of the people that brought some of the numbers up that were in the list, and they weren't all included. And I felt that if we're going to make a recommendation to the City Council, or if we're going to be questioned by the City Council, then I think we should be as explicit as possible. And therefore, I didn't feel it was adequate.
Commissioner Koberstein?
Well, from my perspective, I normally wouldn't take my hand to something the staff wrote, but I think it was fairly evident here that the petitioner intends to appeal this, and who knows where it's going from there. And if we all go back to our Land Use 101 meeting that we had months ago, we were admonished in these quasi-judicial proceedings to make a good record, which includes not just what's on our tape, but what's in the resolution. And I thought there were some gaps as far as important facts that were part of the decisions. And I also felt that our discussion touched on a few more of the specific standards than were included the first time around. So that was why.
Thank you.
I'd also like to thank you for taking the time to do this. You definitely added quite an honest representation of what our discussion was that evening. I just wanted to say thank you. And then offer one suggestion on page 2, number 5, towards the top. It says variation. That should be variance. And I think that to keep this as best of a record of that meeting, that should be changed.
Where are you talking about?
Where it says the applicant is requesting a variation to the requirement on the top of page 2, it should be variance. And then it keeps going on the second sentence. The applicant did not request a variation. That should be variance.
Yeah.
Commissioner Sweeney, would you like to add anything? No? All right. Okay. If we could have a motion to approve this resolution.
So moved.
Is that
As amended.
as amended?
As amended. So moved as amended.
Second.
Commissioner Monette,
Yes.
Commissioner Kisner,
Yes.
Commissioner Koberstein,
Yes.
Commissioner Sweeney,
Yes.
Chairperson Parker.
Yes. Moving on to our next item. This is a design review for 468 Hollis Lane. May we have a staff report, please?
Yes, thank you.
Oh, and I'm sorry. Commissioner Kistner is recusing herself due to the 300-foot limit to her property, or place of abode, excuse me. Commissioner Monette, you know I need to use fancy words when we're doing recusals.
All right, thank you, Chairperson Parker. The applicant is seeking design review approval to convert an existing 2-car garage into living space, 2 new bedrooms, add a new 113 square foot bathroom to the house/garage. Actually, it's just the house now, and construct a new unenclosed 500 square foot carport. The existing garage is already conditioned space and will therefore require minimal work to convert to living space. Essentially, the garage doors will be removed and framed in. Windows will be added, and the rest will be interior work. The new carport will be unenclosed and supported by 4 columns secured to a concrete pad. All exterior changes and additions will be finished with materials that match or complement those on the existing home. No other changes are proposed to the existing home or barn. The height of the existing home will remain unchanged at approximately 22 feet. Project as proposed is below maximum gross floor area permitted and meets all the requirements of the medium density residential district. Staff finds that the proposed configuration of the site, their overall design elements and proposed materials and finishes are in character with the neighborhood and the community in general, and therefore recommends approval of the project. And I would be happy to answer any questions you may have at this time.
Are there any questions of staff at this time? All right. I would like to open up the public hearing. Would anyone like to speak on this item? The esteemed Peter Collins.
We'll see. Peter Collins, architect representing Stan Monty and Amber Wagner, and simply to tell you I'm here to answer any questions if you have them.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And with that, are there any questions? All right. I'm going to close the public hearing and invite commissioner discussion. I actually have no problem with this or the size, considering I know that Amber has 6 children, so.
I don't have any.
I don't know about her life, and I wouldn't make my decision based on that. However,
Well, the square footage
Yeah.
doesn't
Yeah.
scare me as the size of the.
yeah, again, but I view that it's a good use of the space. It's a large lot, and it's well within, I think, the guidelines, however she chooses to use it, or whomever chooses to live there.
Do you have a motion?
And I couldn't find anything I didn't know if it was my ignorance or if it was just a great project, but I couldn't find anything that seemed out of place or questionable. So.
Yeah, I can fully support this application. This is obviously a different situation. You know, every case has its own nuances, and we're in a different neighborhood, a different size lot, and
It is a case-by-case situation.
yeah, it's I think an appropriate improvement.
All right. Do we have a motion?
So moved? Or
I move that we determine that the project is exempt from the requirements of SEQA pursuant to Section 15301, which exempts the minor alteration of existing private structures. Section 15303, which exempts the construction or conversion of small structures, including single-family residences, garages, pools, etc., and that we accept the required findings and approve the design review for the proposed garage conversion, new bathroom, and carport for the residence located at 468 Hollis Lane.
Do we have a second?
I'll second. Sorry about that.
Roll call, please.
I did.
Yes.
No.
Commissioner Monette motioned and Commissioner Koberstein seconded.
Commissioner Monette,
Yes.
Commissioner Koberstein,
Yes.
Commissioner Sweeney,
Yes.
Chairperson Parker.
Yes. And if we can invite Commissioner Kistner back. Thank you very much, Mr. Collins. All right. Moving on, this is our department report for an opportunity for staff to report and give updates to the commission on relevant matters.
Thank you, Chair Parker. The department is continuing to see strong interest in development in St. Helena. We are meeting our development and building permit review timeframes, however, just barely. So those are the workload is starting to impact our timeframes. We are meeting the 28-day building permit review period, which I believe is meeting or beating every other jurisdiction in the county. However, we are starting to really feel the effects of that, and it's starting to be impacted, but we've been able to make it. I do believe planning applications the timeframes will probably begin to slip or to extend. Currently, we can typically get a straightforward planning application from submittal before the commission in approximately 2-month time. I anticipate that time period is probably going to start slipping given the workloads that we have. We have some planned absences from the department, and so I am anticipating that we will be impacted by both of those things, just workload and staff impact. So it'll probably slip to closer to 3 months. I just want to let the commission know that. We are going to also start moving some of the larger scale projects through the process. As it's been mentioned, the Hunter subdivision project and EIR will be coming before the commission in the spring. The general plan and general plan EIR will be coming before the commission in the spring. Short-term rentals, the ordinance revisions are going to be coming back to the commission next month. And we're starting to move on implementing some of the commitments made in the housing element because there were some timeframes that were associated with meeting. We committed to some timeframes in making some changes to our land use regulations with regarding multifamily housing and housing opportunity sites, et cetera. And so those are going to start moving through the process as well. So all of those things are combining to impact timeframes, and just giving you a heads up on that. Moving on, the council adopted the council goals. As you're well aware, on February 11th of this year, the council met to discuss and develop annual strategic goals and objectives. The goal of the meeting was to set objectives and to direct and guide staff in decision-making and prioritization of work for the upcoming year. It was a great turnout, approximately 40 to 50 community members there. Each council member was able to share their kind of personal views on the approach to city business, et cetera. A staff report for formalization of those goals, which went before the council at their last meeting, is included in your packet just for reference. And they also discussed the ad hoc revenue task force recommendations. And the result of the goal setting, was the creation of 3 goals, which is intended to guide staff and Planning Commission efforts for the coming year. And those specific goals are: maintain our quality of life by sustaining and enhancing revenues, maintain a functional and safe city by supporting and maintaining city staff, and manage workloads and dedicate adequate resources for proper project management. And so I just wanted to bring that before the commission to help inform our review process moving forward, and then also kind of some of the projects that we choose to tackle should we have any extra capacity. In addition, at the last meeting, the council was able to vote on the finalized version of the Planning Commission bylaws, which are also in your packet. So that is the final adopted version. It's the intent of staff is to start providing those in every commission packet, so you can reference those. It'll help guide the meetings, those types of things. So you look forward to having those in your packets with every meeting. And then finally, for the agenda forecast, there's a document identified as tentative Planning Commission agenda. And it shows kind of some of the items that were here tonight on the March-April Planning Commission agenda, some of the things that went before the commission in March. And also I wanted to highlight, there's a section that I added that's Planning Commission assignments currently under review by staff. So these are kind of some of the special items that the Planning Commission has directed staff to work on. And there's a number of them, and we have been able to make some progress, and frankly I would say significant progress given the number of applications we're also taking through the development review and being able to meet the timeframes I previously discussed. As mentioned, short-term rentals are going to be pending for April. It's our intention to try to bring back an item that discusses some of the design review submittal requirements also in April. You'll remember that was an item that was discussed by the Planning Commission. And then also the multifamily housing by right on opportunity sites and high-density residential zoning districts. That's also planned to come before the Planning Commission in April. So a lot of big, meaty items will be on the agendas upcoming. And that last one, number 13, was a commitment made in the housing element, which is adopted. So this is just implementing essentially a decision that's already been made, but we have to make changes to the current zoning code in order to implement that as a part of our housing element to comply with the the commitments we've already made to the state. So just keep you posted on that. There's obviously a laundry list of other things that have been identified as interest to the Planning Commission, and then also things that have been identified as interest to staff. Also included in this are some of the larger projects that I've been talking about. We're anticipating submittal of an affordable housing project on McCorkle. We're currently reviewing a multifamily housing project that's market rate on McCorkle. So there are some larger scale projects starting to come forward, and you will be seeing those on future agendas. And that concludes the department report and agenda forecast, and I'm available for any questions.
Are there any questions?
Can I comment on any of those items that you just discussed? I mean, they're on the agenda, but I don't know.
It would be better if you did not.
Yeah, it's not, there's
Well,
no...
if I have a question, can I have a question?
Of course, yeah.
Okay. I understand that the bylaws have been accepted and voted on. If I had, how can any changes to those bylaws take place at this point, or can they, and if so, what's the protocol?
Well, the entire commission would have to vote to direct staff to make additional changes. I will say it would, those were just approved by the
I
commission
understand.
in January.
If I had something in mind, though, how would I bring it up to see if the commission was interested in making a change?
I guess we could pose a question to the commission if there's interest in reviewing the bylaws again.
There's just one thing that wasn't mentioned that I thought was important when we did it, and I didn't think of it, and I wanted to know if there was any way to, maybe I have to wait a year, or maybe I can do it. I don't know what the protocol is to bring it up, and because I think it might be of interest to the rest of the commission too. But it was brought up, but it wasn't incorporated, and it was brought up briefly. So I just don't know what to do at this point.
Yeah, I mean, again, if the commission's interested in reviewing the bylaws again, then the commission can direct staff to do that. I will say from staff's perspective, we're trying to kind of get some of this work completed so we can move on to some of the larger elements. And so if the commission did direct staff to do this, I couldn't commit to a time frame as to when those will be brought back.
Can we go back to what we just heard where the city objectives and goals, and one of those very clearly mentioned managing the use of staff resources. And
That's exactly
we've
right.
just completed this process.
I know, I'm not, I am asking what, I think there's something important that was left out, and I'm asking what the protocol is, if any, to revisit. That's what, I mean, if what I'm hearing is, you know,
I think what
The done
Noah said
deal,
is,
I
should
don't-
we,
Well,
do you want to ask?
I
to the
agree, but
chair?
let's ask I'll pose this to the commission. Would you like to, with a yay or nay, would you like to review the bylaws again? Commissioner Koperstein?
I don't know if we have a regular schedule for reviewing them. You know, they just came to us. And we did act on them. I think I'm more in favor of saying there might be one time a year, maybe the night we do, elections or something, where we also, as part of that, bring up any other changes we want to discuss. But
so in order to, do we need to agendize this item in order to talk about it and make a?
I think,
I don't think, no, we don't need to agendize if we're going to put it on the agenda. That's so you're saying, let's leave it open and bring it up in the future.
Right.
Basically, okay. Commissioner Sweeney?
I think to Bobby's point, can we even be talking at this level of
Yeah,
detail?
The question before the commission is there an interest to review the
Yes,
bylaws
yeah.
again at this time?
At this time, not, I have no interest in that at this time.
Nor do I, Commissioner. All right.
Could I, then is there a possibility of having a review at any time, or how, okay, how?
I
Sure,
think that
at-
moving
at-
forward,
yeah.
maybe in a month or two, you ask again if it can be put on the agenda, if there's an interest at that time, because we just voted basically saying no.
I just wonder, in view of Commissioner Koperstein's suggestion that we have
That's-
like once a year or something like that, can that get on the agenda at some time, or how should that be handled?
Again, you'll have to request, again, at a future meeting, if it is something that the commission would like to put on the agenda, we'll have a vote if we want to discuss it then.
Can I ask you now? Is the
We
commission-
just did.
You said no for now, but I'm wondering if you're interested in having this put on the agenda in June when we,
So-
I would rather wait until it's closer to June and we see what the workload is for staff, going to Commissioner Sweeney's comment of, I think that it's a waste of staff resources to get a little ahead of ourselves.
okay. Then I just wanted to comment too and clarify. I was speaking to someone, a member of the city council, with respect to what the goals of the city are, and whatever we request from you needs to fit into these three goals, and that seemed a little circumscribed, and I was told that anything in the general plan, once the general plan gets certified and approved, anything in the general plan is of interest to the city council, so that if there were items that came up that didn't fit into one of these three categories, but fit into the goals of the general plan and the mission of the general plan, that those would be appropriate to take to the city council. Is that your understanding as well, or is it just these three that we're going to have to, that are going to define what's acceptable?
Chair Parker, I'm sorry to interrupt. I just want to make sure and remind you of the Brown Act and discussing things that are not, but if it's not agendized,
He said I could ask questions about this.
I understand, Bobby, that we were asking questions, but again, it's one of those situations where it's not on tonight's agenda. If you want to put something on the agenda, we can't discuss potential items. Just ask in a meeting if the commission is interested in putting it on, and then we'll have a yay or nay of yes, it's the agenda, so we can discuss it.
Okay.
And I can provide a little bit of response. So the council goals are intended to guide staff and planning commission actions. The general plan is one of the major projects that is going to be coming before the commission, which will implement these goals.
But
So-
I mean in the future, that the general plan would be a guideline as to what was of interest to the city council, not just these three things.
Again, these goals are intended to direct staff and planning commission actions. The general plan is a guiding document for the entire city, and I'm sure there will be numerous elements of it that are of interest to commission, council, and citizens.
All right.
All right.
That will do for now.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? All right. With that, I'd like to adjourn the meeting. Thank you very much.
No,